Okay, why don't we get started with the first ever online version of Trails and Ales, the BEVINAR version. My name is Larry Levine. I'm the Program and Communications Coordinator for ForeverGreen Trails. And with us tonight is our Executive Director, Jane Moore, keeping us honest and making sure that we're answering any questions that pop up, as well as our guests who I will introduce in just a minute here. I wanted to first acknowledge our sponsors who you're seeing on screen, and specifically, of course, Pierce County Parks Department and Pierce County Planning and Public Works Department, who are generous enough to loan us our speakers this evening. Normally, we would hold this event at Edison City Ale House, but of course, due to the health situation currently, we've taken things online. So thank you very much for your patience as we explore the world of online webinar and online events for ForeverGreen Trails. This is, I think, a first for us besides our internal meeting. So thank you for your patience. So just a little bit of housekeeping, if you will. The webinar tools that will be available to you include the Q&A for posting questions that we will get to, and I'll talk more about Q&A in just a second. But participants will not have their mics on or their video on, so you can kick back with your beverage of choice and relax, and no one will be the wiser. So enjoy, and we're just doing that for simplicity and to try to keep distraction down to a minimum, so you're not judging each other's beverages. And extraneous noise is a minimal factor. As I mentioned, Jane will be monitoring our the questions that participants post, and we will have time after each section of the presentations for Q&A. And our guests this evening are Brianne Blackburn, the Pierce County Trails Coordinator from the Parks Department, who will be discussing the Pipeline Trail as well as the Parkland Community Trail, and she'll let us know which order she's going to address that in. And also Sean Phelps, the Senior Transportation Planner from Planning and Public Works, who will be addressing the active transportation plan. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand things over to Brianne at this point. Brianne, you are welcome to start your screen sharing. I'm going to stop mine, and participants, you might see the three of us momentarily on your screen in through our video cameras. Welcome this evening.
All right.
Got my Trails Day koozie here, but the beverage isn't open. Business first, then pleasure for me.
There you go.
Anyway,
all right.
Thanks for joining us.
Bear with me as I get my screen sharing working, and I will make sure and introduce myself, but I'm not great at multitasking. So I'm going to do one thing at a time. All right. All right. Let's see. Everyone seeing my screen okay? Larry, can you give me a thumbs up if you can see it? Great. Awesome. Okay. Let me bring that down. Sorry, I've got my notes up and that's not showing up for me. So let me. I apologize for the delay. I'm going to stop sharing for just a second, and I'm going to redo this.
looks good to me, Brianne. I'm not seeing your notes at all.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry
They
about
just
that.
popped up.
Yeah, it's not letting me put things up as I'm screen sharing for some reason. I'm working on it. I apologize for the delay.
Again, you are sharing your screen now. It
Okay.
looks pretty good.
Okay, so I apologize for that, technical difficulties. Larry mentioned, my name's Brianne Blackburn. I'm with Pierce County Parks, and I'm the trail coordinator with Parks. I've been with Pierce County for about a year now, and I joined Pierce County from environmental planning and natural resource background up in Alaska. So as Larry mentioned, I'm here to talk about a couple of our trail projects that we have in development right now, but I'm also going to start with a little bit of an overview of our park system and speak to kind of our broader system and the regional trails plan as well. And then I'm going to speak to our Parkland Community Trail and our Pipeline Trail. Both of those projects are in development right now, so we are in design on both these, and give some of you an update. I know many of you have heard pieces and parts of both of these projects over the years. Give you an update on where we are with the projects and where we're going in the coming months and years. And just a reminder, you can submit questions. I know we've got some folks on the back end monitoring that, and I'll stop between the trails. So if there are project-specific questions, we can hopefully capture those then. Okay, so just in a way to kind of orient us, talking about the Pierce County Park System. This is a snapshot from our Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Plan, which in the parks world is kind of our comprehensive plan. This plan establishes our goals and recommendations and objectives for developing our system. I won't speak to too many details here, but there's some really interesting things in this plan, and we're quite proud of it. So I throw it up there if you are into this sort of thing and want to look through it and haven't. There's some really good information. I'm of course inclined to suggest that the Regional Trails Chapter 6, but there's also a lot of other good information in the demand and need, which breaks down how we're trying to address gaps in our system across the county, and there's also a good inventory of everything we have in our system. So what you're looking at here is the county and a snapshot of the regional trails plan. So it doesn't have all of our other facilities on here, but it does kind of give you some context for if you do go and read the plan, we talk about the west, central, south, and north regions, and that's what we're looking at here. So today, just to kind of zoom in and geographically give you some context, I'm going to be talking about two projects that are taking place in these circles here. So the Parkland Community Trail and the Pipeline Trail. And the Pipeline Trail as a whole actually just barely covers 3 of our regions, but really primarily for what we're talking about today is in our central region. All right, so the Parkland Community Trail, this project is based in the Parkland community, and you can see it's kind of nestled between Pacific Lutheran University and Sprinker Recreation Center, if you're familiar with those mile markers there. And really, this trail has been on the books as a priority for a number of years, primarily from starting in the Parkland Midland Spanaway Community Plan and our countywide comprehensive plan as well. And a few years back, Sean, who's you'll hear from later, Public Works and Parks teamed up to put in a grant application to get this project in design, and they were successful with that application. So, and that's why we're here today. So this project is funded, and it kind of looks and feels a lot like a Safe Routes to School project by kind of what we're actually trying to accomplish with the project, but it's actually funded out of bicycle and pedestrian funding through WashDOT. So what we have is, starting kind of in the north, looking at Pacific Lutheran University, this trail anchors 5 schools overall, the university, and 3 different parks facilities. So we've got Parkland Prairie, which is kind of in the middle. We've got Gagne Playfield, and then Springer Recreation Center, which ties into the greater Spanaway Lake Park and Spanaway Regional Park system. So the goal with this project is really to provide a safe pedestrian and bicycle route for residents in this community. This is an area, if you're familiar with the Parkland area, there's not a lot of accessible sidewalks or safe places to get around. And so this would really be bringing a safe way for people to get outside and move around, and then also get to some local community destinations. So the schools that we're connecting, that's what's in blue on the map. They're not all labeled, but we've got Franklin Pierce School District. So we're looking at in the north, we've got Washington High School, Keithley Middle School. Moving down south along the trail is Gates High School and Brookdale Elementary School. And then we've got a private school that's right at the corner of Yakima and 138th. And then as you move south, you hit Springer on that. So the pictures you're looking at here are really kind of representations of what we're planning on the trail really looking like. So in most places, it's going to be a trail, a 12-foot paved trail in the right of way, so right along the road system. So if you look at that top picture, that's kind of gives you an idea of what we're looking at. And then the lower image really represents those areas where we're able to we have the opportunity to get the trail off the road system. So that's concentrated kind of the Parkland Prairie area. There's not, we'll be right on the line of the Parkland Prairie habitat. And then we've actually, we're working with the parcels on the other side of Clover Creek as well. So at the corner of the school property there, we've got a couple of properties that we have some opportunity there as well. So that section of trail will be off the road system, so it'll more closely resemble what you're seeing on the bottom screen there. This project really to date has been about assessing where we can put the trail and where the community wants the trail to go. So we've done a fair amount of outreach in the last year or so, starting in the end of 2019, I guess. And we really went out to the community and asked a lot of questions. We had surveys out and interactive website tools to really have people look at this area and let us know where they wanted these connections to happen. Our goal was kind of the north-south connection, and where that trail fell was kind of what we wanted input on. So what you're seeing here is kind of the spine of this system, and what we heard from people was to keep the trail on 8th and not 10th, which 10th isn't really clearly labeled here, but it's the street that runs along Gagne Playfield due to traffic patterns. And so we kept the trail there, and then I'll get into it a little bit more a few slides down, but we shift over to Yakima, so we have a straight shot all the way down to connect into the Springer Rec Center, which there'll be a gate there that opens up into that facility. And then you see some orange lines on this map as well. And these are the kind of spur connections we're looking at, we're making in this. So to fully connect to Gagne, to connect over in front of the schools. And then you'll see one kind of on the southern end of Pacific Lutheran University's campus, trying to make that connection over to the east side of campus. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. So I want you to bear with me at this point. I'm going to shift I'm going to advance my slide, but this is a very normal north-south orientation. And as I change the slide, just kind of tip your head sideways with me, and it'll make a lot more sense, the orientation. So we're going to be focusing on the area you see on this slide that says 129th Street. And then it just kind of tips over. There's not a good way to get this long orientation vertically. So bear with me there. So just for orientation, north is to your left, and we've got Tule Lake Road running down the middle. This is really what this phase of the project is culminating towards. So we're looking kind of at the north end of the project area, and this is a draft conceptual design snapshot of our conceptual design. So we've got Parkland Prairie, and you can see what we've identified as where we'll site the trail, where we'll cross Tule Lake Road, and kind of swing the trail over to connect to 129th Street. So this was 129th was always a connection we were looking at for getting the trail over towards where it could connect to Washington High School, and we're still planning on that. One opportunity that came out of our early conversations with PLU as a partner was to actually bring the trail behind 129th and take advantage of what's currently actively used as a walking path, and kind of formalize that and get that trail north while getting off the road infrastructure. That's positive for a number of reasons. One is it's generally a better user experience. Not being on the roadway, it's a lot safer if you're looking at young children using biking, walking, what have you. You don't have the driveway crossings, all the things that make an off-street trail kind of desirable. So fortunately, PLU has been supportive. We're still figuring out exactly where that alignment will meet their needs and meet our needs, but those conversations are going really well. We expect to have that firmed up in the coming months, and so you'll see that concept moving north. And moving back a slide, you'll see it's depicted on this slide, that north connection all the way up to the school district without having to be on the road. So that's really exciting for us. One of the other things that kind of played out nicely was that this is coupled with unbeknownst to us and to the sewer division, the Pierce County sewer team is also doing a sewer upgrade right now, and they were looking at following almost the exact same alignment for their sewer project. So we're actually able to team up and get one easement, and it looks like that's gonna work out really well, because the trail provides their maintenance crew access to their infrastructure, and it gave us nice opportunity to work together and not both be tearing up 129th to build a trail and put sewer line down. So. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time walking through a lot of these conceptual design slides, because I probably could talk far longer than you would all like to listen on this and pipeline. But this is kind of the middle of that big trail stem. So this is where the trail heads east on 135th and connects over to Yakima. And I put this up here just because it's a slightly different view here. There's a few more driveway crossings, but really we're talking about 5 driveway crossings here, and there'll be a mid-block crossing on a relatively low volume street. The other reason we made this transition here, which is significant, is this allowed us to cross 138th, which is coming up at a safer location. So 8th Avenue and Yakima both come into 138th, and it's really relatively high-speed road. And actually, I think it was November or December of this last year, there was a pedestrian fatality at 138th right in Yakima, which is where we're hoping to put the trail, and just kind of highlighting the need for a safe crossing here. So we opted to site the trail at the Yakima intersection of Yakima and 138th because there was better visibility and we had more opportunity to keep the trail safer. So generally, if you look back at this, I'm sorry, I'm bouncing around a little bit. We've got two crossings on this screen. These are what we call kind of our neighborhood road crossings. These are standard crosswalks, low volume streets. We'll put signage and all sorts of things, but they aren't high volume or high speed roads. We do have 2 roads that warrant a little bit more attention for crossings. Both Tule Lake Road and 138th have a different traffic pattern. So we are planning to put rectangular rapid flashing beacons, RRFBs, at both of these intersections to make the crossing safer. So at this point, I am gonna let any questions, kind of Larry and Jane, to put questions together that might have come in while I've been talking, but I'll speak a little bit to the timeline. So we started in 2019, really with the community engagement and gathering information. Our goal, and we're just about there, is to formalize a concept design. We're in the process of that right now. We're looking at probably the end of June when we have a concept in place, and that'll be our very first stop in our design process. So it's still early in the design process, and lots of opportunity for getting into the details down the road. So through 2020 and 2021, we'll be looking at preliminary and then final engineering and design. And with that process will be more community engagement and more weighing in on the specific details and really taking this from high level concept to actually engineering level documents. And then our goal is to be in construction 2022. So I put the website here. I would encourage you to check out the website. We've got the concept is available on the website for you to peruse at your leisure. And you can also sign up for project updates, which is, we don't put you on we don't sell your email address to anyone, but we put you on a list, and every time we have an update about the project, we push out a big email and let you know if we're, back in the day when we had in-person events, you would get notice of that, or other online opportunities to weigh in as that's our reality right now. So I'll open it up. Larry, Jane, if there are any questions, let me know.
We haven't had any questions come in yet, but I do want to remind folks that if you just click the little Q&A icon on your screen, it should pop up a little window or area where you can type in any questions that you might have. I just wanted to ask you, Brianne, so this area, actually a question, it just came in. Asking if all phases of the project are funded at this time. Is it funded all the way through construction, or can you speak to that?
Yeah, sure. It's a great question. So the grant we have right now is to get us full design. So that's our goal, 2021, to have complete design. We do have some Parks dollars set aside to help with the construction phase, but we are looking at likely a grant ask to kind of close that gap for final construction. We're waiting to see kind of how those estimates come out with our conceptual design, but it's looking like it won't be as significant. We have a decent budget to put towards this, but we will probably be looking for a grant to finalize construction.
Great. And I was curious, could you speak to the sort of the needs and the demographics in this area, the community that it will serve?
Yes, absolutely. So that's a great point. Something I intended to hit on is this trail is really geared to be right now a community trail serving this community, really moving families and residents from schools and community destinations. One thing we're looking at is kind of the bigger picture, looking at transit growth in that area. The bus rapid transit line is planned to come down to Parkland. And so there'll be a growing need for people having safe ways to get to transit. So there's some east-west connections there that we'll be looking at in the future. And then also you see that orange arrow PLU campus kind of over to the east. Our goal there is to really get to a place where we can connect to infrastructure heading north under 512 and into downtown Tacoma. So the orange lines you see on here are from our existing and proposed non-motorized transportation plan or active transportation plan, which you get to hear about in a little bit. And so we're hoping to tie into that. This community is really underserved when it comes to trails and park facilities. They do have a few parks here and there, but this community is lower income and really needs access to these safe ways to get around. So one of the reasons this project has been high on our list is to really help serve the parts of the county that don't have first of all, aren't covered by another park district or another municipality. And so Pierce County is really the primary parks provider in this area. And so we're looking to try to fill some of those gaps, and this trail will help us do that, and also ties into our broader regional trail connection down the road. So that's some of the context for this project.
So those orange arrows that we're seeing in the diagram are not just sort of notional flow arrows. Those are actual connections that are being designed into the trail?
Yes. So right now the concept design that you'll see on the website is really focused on kind of that spine, which is that the yellow trail that you see on the map. But the connections west to Gagne, east in front of the schools, and then also east up at PLU. Those are a part of the project. They're just at a slightly different phase in development. So looking at PLU, we're waiting to confirm where PLU wants to see that trail on their property. And then the other connections, we're looking at sidewalk and bike lanes in a couple of places, but and then in Brookdale Elementary is under construction. So we're kind of waiting for some of those details to play out so we can address the best way to serve those needs.
In that same vein, there was a question regarding at the south end of the trail, how it will flow into existing trails or entrances to the parks.
Yep. So right near 144th by Sprinker there was a gate at one point. It's been fenced over recently in the last year or so. Our plan is to tie into that, and with the improvements that are happening at Sprinker right now, they're undergoing an outdoor facility upgrade. The intent is to open those gates up, and the trail will be a part of those upgrades through Sprinker. And then once you get to Military Road on the other side of Sprinker, there's actually existing crossing and sidewalk to get into Spanaway Lake Park.
Okay, and I think we have time for one more question, and there is a question just about how long the finished trail will be.
That's a great question. It's about 2.5 miles, depending on where the final alignment on PLU happens. So we're looking at about 2.5 miles overall. Okay.
Do you want to continue on with your presentation and talk about our pipeline trail? Great.
All right. Okay, so I am going to take us zoom back out to remind everyone where pipeline is in relationship to Parkland. So again, we're primarily going to be in our central region for the park system, but we're northeast of Parkland. So the bulk of where we'll be looking at really falls in kind of the Summit Waller neighborhood of this area. Okay, so pipeline project is similar to Parkland in that it is a planned to be a 12-foot paved pathway accommodating bicycles and pedestrians. Pipeline is slightly different in that it is almost entirely off the roadway. So what we have in this area is Tacoma Public Utilities water pipeline right-of-way. So they've got a buried water pipeline throughout most of this route. And you're probably familiar with this in several places. This actually is used as a residential road as well. But the primary use of this corridor is utility right-of-way. And so there's a maintenance road that travels along this. So this trail is a little bit different also from Parkland in that it is a regional connection. We're looking at this not only to be a recreational trail, but connecting both the Tacoma urban area and South Hill urban areas. So there's opportunity for commuting, active transportation commuting between those areas as well. And the section I'm talking about today is what you see circled, but the vision for this trail and what's actually in place already extends beyond Pierce County's jurisdiction. So to the north, you have, and I see my map actually kind of stops up there, but you have an existing trail that the city of Tacoma has completed all the way to downtown Tacoma. So they are completing out to 72nd and Waller this spring, I believe. I think the grand opening was supposed to be in June. I don't know the status of that at this point, but what we're planning on doing is picking up at 72nd and Waller, which is outside city limits. You can see we've transitioned into unincorporated Pierce County. And we'll pick up from 72nd and Waller, and the plan is it's about 5.5 miles all the way to 94th Avenue out in South Hill to tie into existing trail infrastructure in South Hill, which is Nathan Chapman Trail that travels through from South Hill Community Park up through Heritage Rec Center. So that's the big picture. The even bigger picture is looking out to the future. And as you head south and east in this project area, you see a lot of dotted lines. Those are our vision for the South Hill Community Trail Network, and headed out towards an undeveloped park property that we have called 100 Acre Wood, and ultimately down a very steep and complicated hill to connect to the Foothills Trail. So while I say that that's our vision, there are pieces of that are much further out than what we're talking about today. But ultimately, the vision for this project, which has been on someone's books as a priority since about early 2000s, if not longer, connects about 15 miles overall of this property. So 15 miles of trail and lots of parks and other connections as well. So what you're looking at here on images, to get back to kind of the slide content, is kind of a graphic of what this will look like. So you've got a maintenance road, and then a kind of a shoulder, and then a 12-foot wide paved trail. And what is missing on this graphic, and what we're working towards on a portion of our trail at least, is to include equestrian trail as well alongside the paved trail. So the picture below that graphic is actually what they have in the city of Tacoma, which looks similar and different than what we're looking at. The trail through Pierce County is not planned to be lit. You can see there's lighting all the way along this trail. But again, you see kind of the maintenance road on one side, which is much more residential in the city. And then you've got the trail kind of above it. So it'll look relatively similar to the other areas of our trail. So the images along the bottom of this slide are kind of current conditions in a couple of different places. It looks vastly different depending on where you are. But these are the picture in the lower right-hand corner is actually as the trail cuts through Orange Gate Park. And I'm not sure exactly where the left-hand picture is, but you can see there's a couple driveways, and in some places it's gated, and a lot of those gates are TPU access gates. So moving past kind of the high project level, what you're looking at here is our trail alignment plans that we presented to the public in February. So there's going to be some differences between what's here and what the concept that we're working on right now. But as you can see, the trail, the full trail design that we're working towards is 5.5 miles. It has 12 road crossings, some of them more complicated than others, and multiple driveway crossings. Those are some of our more our significant challenges, I guess, with this project. Driveway crossings are always kind of a safety concern, and there are TPU had interests in not having increasing access to for residential traffic through these areas, as it's a utility corridor, and then also making sure we're safely constructing a trail for people just to get from one end to the other and crossing roadways. Not the least of which is Canyon Road, which is undergoing an upgrade construction starting this summer. So we've got we've got a lot of things happening along this corridor. It seems pretty straightforward as we've got really a cleared corridor to put a trail in that already has is already used as a trail in a lot of places, but there's a lot more variables than just getting that trail in, as we found out. So one other aspect of this project that's is interesting is we've got 2 parks properties that this trail comes either through or alongside, and I put those in green on these maps so you could kind of see where they happen. So we've got Orange Gate Park, which is about 140-acre property, and then we've got Half Dollar Park, which is at the very end on 94th Avenue, which if you're not familiar with Half Dollar Park, it just looks like a undeveloped, relatively small parcel as you go by it. Both of those are planned starting later this year for master plan and master plan updates in some cases to happen alongside the development of the trail. So we have property that we can use for trailheads, which is exciting, and we have other park amenities that'll come alongside the development of those parks. So there's some fun opportunities there. Orange Gate Park is currently has some kind of informal trail system and used by a lot of equestrian folks in that area. So we're looking at trying to accommodate that equestrian use with our trailhead facilities and developing kind of with what the community wants to see in this area. Make sure I'm not skipping over too much. All right, so busy slide as I'm seeing it all up on the screen here. This is our kind of a project timeline. I put some big star on there to kind of show where we are with this. But again, this project is really focused on getting a conceptual level design for this 5.5 miles of future trail. So we started back in the end of 2019 with the kind of analysis and inventory of the area, starting alternatives and evaluation, and we're finalizing the conceptual design right now. We had several opportunities to reach out to landowners and the public, and that was back mostly in February. And where we're at right now is preparing our grant application for construction funding. So what we have decided to do is phase the construction of this project, and we're really focusing on kind of that first leg, picking up where the city's project ends and bringing the trail out to Orange Gate Park. That's been our focus right now, and financially, as the dollars kind of fleshed out, that's really we really were looking at needing to kind of chunk this out and figure out the best way to get pieces done incrementally. So this will include a trailhead at Orange Gate Park and equestrian facilities there as well. But it does stop short of Canyon Road, which is there are several challenges with that that just takes some more time to work out. And of course, getting across Canyon Road is costly, in that it increased signalization and other things. So that will be in future phases. But we are completing the design all the way through 5.5 miles. So I mentioned the master planning that's happening right now, both Orange Gate Park and Half Dollar Park. I mentioned the park parcel that will be programmed, but there's also another piece of property just across the trail from the park that we are going to put another trailhead on. Let's see if that is visible. Probably not particularly visible for your screen, but you can see, hopefully you can see my cursor. You can see Orange Gate or Half Dollar Park here, just this tiny little triangle. And on the other side of the right-of-way corridor, there's a parcel right here that we are able to work with Public Works to use for a parking facility for the trail. So the Half Dollar Park will be programmed as a park, and we'll be able to put another trailhead facility here. So that will be happening. The planning for that will be happening with the master planning process. All right. So this picture, I love this picture. Kind of shows heading south, well, heading east, I guess, southeast on the trail, you've got some pretty phenomenal views of Mount Rainier on a clear day. And it's quite shocking to go from the city section of the trail to kind of that rural feel out in unincorporated Pierce County. It really is beautiful, and will be quite a nice ride when it's finished. I'm sure several of you on the presentation have ridden this many times in the past, but we're hoping to bring some accessibility with a paved trail and open it up for recreation and commuting. So at this point, if there are any questions on Pipeline, I'm happy to take them, or if there's any lingering questions about Parkland I didn't get to, I'm happy to answer those as well.
I won't necessarily take the questions in order, but I think a general question that I've heard a few times is why was a separate trail being designed and constructed? Why not just work with the utility to pave the existing road?
That's actually a great question, and something I kind of glossed over in looking at our design. The first really short answer to that is TPU did not want to see combined use on their maintenance road. And part of that had to do with the residential traffic that also is in that area. It opened them up to liability to have both a trail, residential traffic, and maintenance traffic on one area. So there were a few areas that we were able to work with them on siting the trail and the maintenance road together. But that is only in places early on in our section of trail that doesn't have any residential traffic. So really it was a liability issue for TPU, and as it's their property, their interest is maintaining it for maintenance. And they did not want to combine that many uses in one area. So largely you'll see a maintenance road, separation, and a trail. There'll be a few places early on where they will be together.
And you mentioned that in the this first phase, we're not getting as far as Canyon Road. Is that correct?
Correct. So we are planning to currently, and we're refining the numbers for our grant application. But what we're looking to is 72nd and Waller through Orange Gate Park. So we'll be stopping short of getting to Canyon Road. Which
kind of leads to the next question, I think. Do you see a potential opportunity to work with the Department of Public Works on that Canyon Road crossing?
We absolutely are working with Public Works on that Canyon Road crossing right now, because they will be going through construction in that area now. We've met with them and tried to find areas where we could have their construction crew set up a few things so we don't have to tear up Canyon Road when we come through with the project, to lay conduit, things like that. So there's been a lot of coordination with Public Works, not to mention the fact that they get to review and make sure crossings are compatible with traffic flow and safety. So we've had lots of conversations about what that will look like, but the final on that will be down the road, since we're not constructing that in the first phase.
Okay. And that question had specifically mentioned the word flyover, and so I don't have the context for that particular area, but it might be because is Canyon a higher volume or higher speed road in that area, and so just having a total grade separation as opposed to potentially a signalization might be something. I don't know if that's a possibility to look at or analyze with Public Works, but I think that might have been the gist of what the question asker was getting at.
Right, and that's of course a conversation we've had. It is slated to be a 5-lane busy truck road once the upgrade is complete. So we did have a conversation about what a potential overpass would look like, a grade separated crossing. At this point, that isn't the route we've decided to go. We are looking at signalizing that, but looking to the future and understanding that is a continuing conversation. It's of course much more costly to do an overpass, and just it gets into a whole other sort of questions. But we've also brought in traffic engineers and transportation engineers to look at that and make sure that whatever we do put in there can be done safely. So we are looking at a full pedestrian signal right now with that crossing. So it would be full signalized. It's a step up from a hawk signal. So it would be fully signalized and timed with traffic. So we are trying to address the cross flow from Pipeline Road, and then the traffic, and then the trail all at the same time there.
Great. There aren't other questions regarding the pipeline trail, but someone else, another participant, was curious to know if you have an update on the bridge between the Foothills Trail, the bridge between Buckley and Enumclaw.
Oh, yeah, White River Bridge. I'm not a substantial update, but I can say that that is still in the works with King County. That is a King County Parks project, and that is slated for construction in 2021. So I know there's a number of partners at the table, including Pierce County Parks, that have put money towards that effort, but it is moving forward. The construction timeline is 2021 though.
All right. Well, not seeing any other questions on that particular project or other trails questions. I guess we can move on to Sean's presentation regarding the Pierce County Active Transportation Plan. And so, Sean, you can I guess turn your video on and mic and share your screen. Howdy. And thank you very much, Brianne.
Hello. And let's see if we can get my presentation up here. And Larry, are you seeing that okay in slideshow view and hearing me okay?
I am hearing and seeing you. Brianne, if you are seeing his presentation properly, you can chime in, or Jane. I am not yet seeing your presentation, but I have an odd view on my screen setup today.
Nope, I still see, I do not see your presentation, Sean.
Brianne, there's did you hit the button at the top that says something like remove your screen?
Yep, I stopped sharing my screen.
Okay.
So at the bottom, is your share screen, your green share screen button visible?
Well, I hit it once. Let me try it again. Okay, maybe I didn't do it quite right.
All right, we can see your screen. We can see your screen. Yeah, just start. There you go. Looks great. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Larry and Brianne. And as Larry said, I'm Sean Phelps, Senior Transportation Planner with the Pierce County Planning and Public Works Department. And I'm here to talk to you about our Active Transportation Plan update. And this is a 20-year plan. It's part of our transportation element of our comprehensive plan. But we also plan it to be a standalone document. So the current status is we have an internal draft, and we've been working with our Pierce County Transportation Advisory Commission for over a year to get to where we are now in the internal draft with some stops and starts. And we plan to have the first public draft available in July or August of this year, and also an online open house and survey to go along with that. And so, as most comprehensive plans have as a core element, we'll have a vision, goals, and policies. And this will be a significant revision to what is in our current comprehensive plan transportation section. I'll talk more about that on the next slide. And we will have bicycle and pedestrian project proposals on county roads, and also for skateboards and other people who roll on other devices, non-motorized. So while this is primarily on county roads, we're really looking to make linkages to trails, for instance, especially the 2 trails that Brianne talked about, as well as transit. And then we're looking closely at connecting to the city limits. Tacoma has a lot of bike lanes, so we want to connect to those as much as possible, and also to the state highways like Highway 7 that has bike lanes. And so major reasons for this update, besides some of the ones I've already mentioned, our last standalone plan was actually the 1997 non-motorized transportation plan. I think there's at least 2 people on the call today that actually were on the committee that worked on that. So thank you for being with us all these years. And so instead of just a small element of the comprehensive plan, we want this to be a standalone, as well as it will be rolled into the overall comprehensive plan. And one of the big missing gaps we have right now is a fundable bike and pedestrian plan. We have a wish list and many different plans, including the 1997 plan, that go into probably now the billions of dollars, and we have more like millions or tens of millions. So we need to try to prioritize to create a list that's more fundable, that we can go out for grant funding for and actually try to implement in 20 years. And so, as I mentioned, the policy topics, there's been a lot of change in the last decade or so that need to be reflected in the plan. Things like social and health equity. So we need to look at serving historically underrepresented populations like low income and minority communities. Supporting our planned mixed use and high density areas and transit routes. We have an upcoming bus rapid transit down Highway 7. It's supposed to open in 2023. So we're looking at trying to get linkages to that. There's not a lot of sidewalks on the crossroads, so we're planning and actually implementing some of those right now. And we have a complete streets ordinance, but we want to further develop those policies and then road designs that go along with those policies. And then in the last few years, we've adopted a Safe Routes to Schools plan and an Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA plan. So we're rolling those into this active transportation plan as well. I just wanted to give you a couple examples of what we've been doing recently that will be continuing with this planning effort. Here's a project we constructed in 2018 in Parkland on C Street, just south of 512. This connects at the south end of PLU. And as you can see, there's a bus stop there that was not accessible to anybody in a wheelchair or other device that needs a curb ramp. So we went in and put the curb ramps and a new section of sidewalk. And in fact, from here to about a half mile south of here, we upgraded the sidewalks that existed with ADA curb ramps. And we're talking about road design. This is kind of the concept of what we're looking at. Right now, our road design drawings don't really include bike lanes. The street trees aren't called for. And we do generally have sidewalks on new roads, but we're also looking at wider sidewalks than 6 feet in some areas, even 8 or 10 feet in some of our higher density areas. And on-street parking is shown there, which we are planning in some areas, which is really pretty much non-existent in the unincorporated area now, except for a few areas of Parkland. So our Transportation Advisory Committee late last year sat down and we gave them a task to take these big maps and draw lines on them of what corridors they'd like to see bike and pedestrian facilities. And I don't expect you to really read this map for it to be that legible, but this is the area south of Tacoma and Puyallup. And as you can see, the purple lines are all the lines they draw on the map. So there's tons of needs out there. Most of these roads don't have sidewalks on them today or wide shoulders or bike lanes. So there's a huge list again, and this kind of looks like some of our past plans with a giant list. So now we need to sit down and think about how to prioritize these and come up with a smaller list. We do plan to keep the master list of projects in the plan, probably as an appendix, so that if opportunities arise, we can have those documented. But the fundable list is going to be much smaller. And I'd like to point out too that The trail, pipeline trail, if you can see my cursor up here, it's diagonally through the top of the map. That's the pipeline trail that Brianna was talking about. And then over on the left central is the Spanaway Lake area and the Parkland Trail. So we're really looking at tying into those trails. So I mentioned we need to prioritize. So we're looking at a set of evaluation criteria that really come out of our policy document. And so things like what are we in proximity to, and especially schools, transit, parks, shopping, jobs, and other destinations. We're looking at the makeup of any area. What is income? Is it a highly racially diverse area? Are there a higher percentage of elderly or young people? And also auto availability, because those areas that have sometimes 15 to 20% of the households may not have autos available. They're really going to rely a lot more on sidewalks and bike lanes to get them to where they're going, including to transit. And then we are looking really in some of our core areas like Parkland, Spanaway, and South Hill, where we already have pretty high densities allowed. We're looking at even higher densities through our community planning efforts. So we really want to support these areas where there'll be more people living and working in the future. And then we're looking at safety aspects, especially have there been bike pedestrian collisions, which, you know, unfortunately, that's often how we find the need for projects if there's some safety issues out there. And then we're looking at, as I mentioned before, connecting to trails and filling other gaps in the system where we already have maybe a sidewalk on the one end and the other, but we need to make those connections to make it continuous. And one aspect is geographic equity, which doesn't necessarily fit well with some of the other criteria, but we want to make sure in this large county that we have something for everyone, so to speak, that we're putting something out in the Key Peninsula, something out in the East County. So that's a factor that comes into play. So this graphic is a draft of kind of how we're looking at all these factors together in a draft set of projects. And when we release a plan, this may be revised somewhat, but this shows kind of the check boxes we're making. And some of the projects, almost all the boxes are checked. Some of them not many, and the ones where there aren't many tend to be on the peninsulas or out in the rural areas of the county where you don't have the density. You might not have transit or parks nearby. So those are the kind of projects that will be filling in some of the geographic equity gaps. So back to the schedule. As I mentioned, the draft plan online open house, we're expecting to be out in July or August. And then after that, as we receive comments on that draft, we'll revise it, and we expect it to go to our planning commission probably in October, and they'll have public hearings, and then it'll go to council sometime after that, depending on how long the planning commission hearings draw out. And we expect there probably will be an open house, or one or more. The planning commission is really keen on having a lot of open houses, actually, so we may have multiple ones. And this, of course, depends on our status as far as the COVID epidemic. And I mentioned this will be an amendment to the comprehensive plan that will happen in 2021. And so that's all I have right now as far as the presentation. And Larry, are there any questions that have come in yet?
Yeah, well, first there was a comment by a participant of appreciation for reducing South 72nd to 2 lanes from Waller Road to Canyon Road, appreciating that it's a great traffic calming and it's in close proximity to the pipeline trail. So
thank you. And yeah, I didn't mention that. We're really proud of that. We originally got a lot of negative feedback. People thought, oh, traffic's going to be really congested, and actually, when we put it on the ground, the naysayers kind of went away, and a lot of people were saying, well, it's a lot safer, you know, even for motorists, because there's less rear-end collisions on the road. I mean, that'll have to show over time how much of a safety improvement it is, but we were able to, by reducing the lane, putting the bike lanes out there, and we don't have sidewalks there, unfortunately. That would have been probably a multi-million-dollar project at least to do that, but at least the pedestrians have their choice of going on the existing soft surface trails on the outside, or some may choose to use the bike lane. But yes, I bike that myself, and it's a nice addition.
Was that a 4-lane to 2-lane conversion, or of what?
It was 4 to 3, so
4 to 3, okay.
we had 2 lanes each direction with no center turn lane. And one of the big impetuses for the project was there was a lot of rear end collisions happening, especially in the left of the 2 lanes. So people would be trying to make a left and somebody would rear end them. So we put the center turn lane in there, which is really a great safety feature for motorists. But by taking 4 lanes down to 3, we had about 12 extra feet to put those bike lanes on either side.
Do you know, has there been any discussion of a pedestrian crossing island policy that would be in the plan, and then I guess fed then into the comprehensive plan, so that it's routinely looked at to provide for pedestrian crossings in that the center turn lanes, so that pedestrians will have an easier time crossing the street. They can just acquire a gap in traffic in one direction, cross to the center and have a refuge island, and then acquire a gap for the other direction. And instead of, frankly, having a dangerous game of Frogger, it's much more difficult to acquire a gap across a whole cross section of roadway.
Right. I don't think there's a specific policy in there right now, but that's a good one to think about adding. I think we do speak to that as a possible treatment there. And that would, typically be done at a mid-block situation, which right now we don't have a lot of those mid-block crossings, but we are generally thinking of more of those in the future.
Yeah, and I appreciate that before and after slide that you had provided, because that was a really striking example of equity in mobility. I'm trying to put myself in the position of someone in a wheelchair who's might be transit dependent, and that it's I would feel pretty insulted by the before and relieved by the after. So thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, it's a shame that a lot of sidewalk, intersection crossings were built without any curb ramps in past years and past decades. And then even as little as 10 to 15 years ago, the ramps were built so they weren't very usable. I mean, they're better than nothing, but the Americans with Disabilities Act was passed in 1990, which is 30 years ago. But the standards to really implement those really lagged behind at a federal level. And finally, just within the last couple of years, they've come to what they are today, which are very usable standards. And I'd like to mention too that our staff went out, we started about 5 years ago, and went out and inventoried all of our sidewalks for their condition, as well as the slope of the curb ramps. And the vast majority of the curb ramps were deficient. So our Americans with Disabilities Act plan that I mentioned has identified about $100 million in projects just to retrofit existing sidewalks. So you can imagine if you add, the new sidewalk needs on there, we're talking probably billions of dollars if you're trying to outfit our whole urban area with sidewalks and ramps.
And when you mentioned the prioritization that will have to be done to kind of arrive at a fundable project list, is that something that you envision the department will use, say, like a point rating system for the criteria, or will the and sort of as a follow-up on that, will the county be, if you will, showing its homework so that it can make sense to the public why something rates higher than another, because it might not be apparent otherwise.
Right. We explored using a point system. We tried it out for some time. It it seemed like it came out with kind of uneven results, particularly if you had a longer project, say it was a mile long, you might hit all of the criteria. Then if you're looking at a short project, it might be just a couple blocks that actually in reality might be a better improvement for the community. So we found that coming out with an absolute score seemed to not always result in what we wanted to see. So right now we're going with a checklist system. It's still under discussion whether perhaps maybe that would come out with some aggregate score of the criteria to give us something a little more possibly numeric, but probably not as detailed as what we had originally looked at.
Yeah, it's always challenging to develop a system that works for all projects, whether they're tiny or long or what have you. But it's definitely, I'm sure folks will be interested in projects in their area, and sometimes it's hard to understand why things are not at the top of the list. So I'll be pretty interested in seeing the department's discussions and their process. We didn't necessarily have any additional questions about the active transportation plan, but we do have one more question, and it might actually be something that either yourself or Brianne could address. And the participant notes that there's 50 miles of trails in Pierce County and 80 miles of Pierce County flood control levee, I guess, rights of way, perhaps maintenance roads. And they were interested in improving the surfaces of those flood control levees and obtaining some more public access, whether it's for recreation or for mobility. In essence, it's a question about breaking down the silos, if you will, between departments, not just parks and public works, transportation side of things, but also other public entities, even within the county, that have space and rights of way that the public might utilize. So do you have any comments about any efforts to coordinate with those entities? And Brianne, if you have comments, welcome you to chime in as well.
I'll take a shot first, and maybe Brianne can add to that. I know the flood control plans that have been put out by the county and the Army Corps of Engineers have been pretty heavily scrutinized, and there's been comments put together by the community about looking at those type of shared use facilities. We don't have much control over the Corps of Engineers, I guess, but I think that's a possibility. And Brianna, if you're there, do you know if there's been any discussion? I know there's some lines on the map following many of the rivers and different ideas for implementing those.
Yeah, I unfortunately don't have a lot of detail to add to this. I do know, as I'll just emphasize what Sean brought up, that not all of the levees are Pierce County. There are a lot, but some are under the Army Corps, and some, quite honestly, don't have public access to them. And I don't know specifically on the reasoning behind that from surface water management side of things, but I know some are publicly accessible and some are not. So I think there's some maintenance needs and some safety concerns with just opening up all of them. That being said, that certainly doesn't apply to that's not a blanket application to all of them. So I think there is opportunity there to continue those conversations. It has not been something, it has not been a conversation that I've been in with any detail at this point.
And that was my words of saying Pierce County. So that I don't think was the question asker's words necessarily, but that's part of it, is knowing who all the players are.
Right.
We're just going to give one more shout out for if there are any other questions that folks have about any of the three topics, either the two trail presentations or the active transportation plan. And then also you can just fire at the same time any other questions that our presenters might be able to answer. And we'll just wait a couple seconds to see if folks have any other questions. Because otherwise we're going to enjoy a shorter meeting, shorter webinar, and perhaps more beverage and less webinar. That might be appreciated by folks. We did want to mention that since we are starting to get some public lands opening up, we did want to mention some best practices. And so I am going to hopefully successfully share my desktop. So Brianna and Sean, are you seeing my slide there?
Yep.
Okay, great. So rather than go over and read a bunch of policy that's rolling out from the governor's office and from all the state and local jurisdictions, I just want to give a shout out to the WTA. They're doing a great job of following the policy and interpreting it to the degree that that's needed for the public. And if you boil down their recommendations, they're just represented by those bullets there, but of course keeping 6 feet minimum and coordinate your passing with other trail users. It's just a little communication can go a long way. Do use masks, and please only recreate with household members who you are already exposed to, and sticking close to home to reduce exposure, planning ahead a little bit to minimize stops, and bringing your own food and water, and preparing, of course, for biological needs. And since facility maintenance is still reduced at many of our parks and trails, please pack out what you pack in. If you brought it with you, you're able to take it out, those wrappers, etc. Take everything out, because there may not be trash service at some of the places that you might be used to seeing it. And do respect closures that are posted, and check before you go. And some parks and trails there have a standing policy of that if there's a trailhead in a parking lot that's open but it's full, that means that that facility is at capacity. And please respect those, and don't park in neighborhood streets as like overflow. Just try to respect not just closures, but realistic limits to these facilities. And if you can also reduce risks that might strain emergency services by playing it safe. I know I'm going to be keeping it a little mellow on my mountain biking, and we can all do our part to help reduce risk and burdening emergency services. For more information, I really encourage folks to go to WTA's website. They have just great blog articles. They're an important partner with us, and I really appreciate the work that they've been doing as a government interpreter and policy interpreter, and to help everyone out. So kudos to them. I wanted to let folks know also that ForeverGreen Trails has some upcoming events. Pierce County Trails Day is indeed July 25th, and we are planning for Trails Day to occur. We are working with potential hosts to have events around the county for different ages and abilities. And we are also planning to have a number of do-it-yourself events, so that if we are not able to gather in groups, or if folks who are, say, higher risk choose not to gather in groups while some of us can, or if we are not able to gather in groups at all, or if you're not able to make the Trails Day events because you work or have other family issues, So we're going to have do-it-yourself events of various types. And if you would like to help coordinate an event like that, you could put together a bike ride or a specific walking route or a walking tour, or you name it. Just use your imagination, and we're happy to work with you. Our job in Pierce County Trails Day is as a recruiter of hosts and a coordinator and promoter. It's really organizations and individuals that make the day happen with events around the county. Trails and Tales is a new event that we're going to be trying out throughout August. It's a photo contest on social media. And despite the name, you and your pet does not even need to have a tail. It was just our little play on our trails and ales, but it will be a photo contest of you and your pet enjoying a trail with posting a photo of it on social media with hashtag trails and tales. And so just look for more information about that upcoming. And we are planning on our Pierce County Trails Conference in the fall. And again, we are also going to be looking at having aspects of that, if not the whole thing virtual, then aspects of that so that it's more accessible to folks from around the county and beyond. And also if folks feel that they need to still avoid crowds by that time, we will try to accommodate that with some virtual content. So with that, I just want to thank our presenters, Brian Blackburn from Pierce County Parks and Sean Phelps from Pierce County Planning and Public Works. And also I'd like to thank Jane, our executive director, for helping me wrangle questions. And we might have, I'm just going to take a quick peek. It was just a congrats and thank you in the Q&A section from one of the participants. So with that, I will thank you all for joining us this evening. And the last thing I want to say is that the COVID pandemic has impacted, obviously, our usual events. Usually we would have this event at a local pub, as in City Ale House. And that's an opportunity not just to enjoy each other's company, but also, frankly, to have a raffle and fundraiser. And so it's an example of how our events are being affected by the pandemic, and that also affects our revenue. So after the webinar is over, you should be redirected to a page where you can help us defer the costs of having this online, because that was not free, unlike having our space donated by Edison City Ale House. And you can help support our important work to help create a system of trails connecting all communities throughout Pierce County. So with that, thank you very much for joining us, and have a good evening.